Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to review the REL Acoustics HT1205 subwoofer. I'm borrowing this subwoofer from the same friend who let me borrow the ELAC DBR62s, so special thank you for that. You might be wondering, hey, isn't this their theater line? Why are we reviewing it? I had that same question, so I called REL actually, and I asked them, because before the theater line existed for REL, if you wanted a 500 watt RMS subwoofer with a 12-inch driver, you had to spend $3,000. REL subwoofers are typically pretty expensive, and this guy is only $699. So I gave them a ring, and I told them, I said, hey, you know, it kind of seems like this is a really great way to like sneak into the REL family, get big power, big output at a fraction of the price. You market it for movies. Is it any good for music? I talked to the owner, who's also the lead engineer, and he said, look, at the end of the day, this is still a REL subwoofer. It's still going to have those characteristics associated with the REL brand. It's still going to have great speed and articulation and bass detail and killer output. And he wasn't wrong. So he said, while they have a whole music range and this is designed for movies and theater use, it is still very good as a subwoofer, just period in general, and you can use it for music. Now, you're not going to have the high level inputs, which REL says is going to give you more like better system matching, match the dynamics of the system a little bit better and things like that. And you're not going to get the 10 coats of hand rubbed lacquer on this cabinet either, right? But I digress. Let me tell you about its specs, and we're just going to jump into the review, okay? So we've got a 12-inch sealed carbon glass woofer, 500 watt RMS amp. Its frequency response goes down to 22 hertz at the -6 dB point. We have RCA and LFE inputs, a phase switch so you can select 0 or 180. Its frequency adjustment knob allows you to turn it down as low as 40 hertz. Its width, height, and depth are 15 by 16 by 15.7. It weighs 38 pounds, has a line grain black finish, 3-year warranty, 60-day in-home trial, and costs only $699. Now, if you want this in a different color, too bad, it only comes in this color. I'm going to give you some market context next. What other companies are competing for your subwoofer dollars? Well, first we have the SVS SB2000 Pro. That is either $800 or $900 depending on the finish. It has 550 watts RMS and a 12-inch driver in a sealed cabinet. We have Rhythmic F12 400. That's $850, 400 watts, again 12-inch driver in a sealed cabinet. Next we have the Monolith M12. It's $800, 500 watts, 12-inch driver, sealed cabinet. And lastly, the Emotiva S12, which is again 500 watts, 12-inch driver, except that one has a 12-inch passive radiator as well. All the subwoofers on that list are more expensive than this, except the Emotiva. That's the same price. So there are quite a few brands competing for subwoofer money in this category. I haven't heard all of those, but I have heard one of those, and we're going to get into that comparison a little bit later. So why should you look in REL's direction over some of those other brands? Well, a few of those companies on that list, they have like a thing they go for. It seems like most good companies do. If we look at SVS, for example, it seems to be that their thing is like the software side. They've got that cell phone app. They use crazy amount of fine-grained control over all the adjustments and settings, and you can adjust phase in increments of 1 degree and things like that. They're the DSP as well. If we look at Rhythmic, they have the servo control technology. But if we look at REL, what's their thing? Well, their thing is going to be a lightweight driver, an analog passive style approach to the electronics. There's no DSP in this unit. They believe that can slow down the entire experience. And I think they might be onto something, because this thing is really quick. And if you think about it, it does make sense. When you have a DSP and a subwoofer, what's happening essentially, you're feeding it an analog signal, it's converting it to digital, then back to analog to drive the woofer. So that's going to take some time. Is that time audible? I don't know. I just know this doesn't use one, and it is quicker than subwoofers I've heard that have DSPs. Maybe it's just the lightweight cone and the DSP doesn't slow it down. I don't know. This thing is freaking snappy though, guys. What else? REL believes the subwoofer should be beautiful, and I think this is beautiful. I'll be honest, I think all their subwoofers are beautiful. And lastly, they do believe that a subwoofer doesn't need tons of adjustments. When I was talking to John, he said if a subwoofer is designed well, you shouldn't need a lot of adjustments to get it to integrate well. I wasn't sure if that would be the case, but in real world practice, it turned out to be true. It didn't matter which pair of speakers I put on the stands. I knew exactly where in my room a subwoofer goes because I've had so many in here. So I put it down in the same spot I always do. Pick the phase, frequency, and gain. I maybe got up 3 to 5 times to get that gain perfect, but again, within 10 minutes, I was able to integrate this thing perfectly, no matter what pair of speakers I had. I tried the ELAC DBR62s, the Buchart S400s, and the Silverline Minuet Supreme Pluses. I use those because those only have a 4-inch driver and they're very bass shy. Anyways, so pros and cons. Pros, the price, the performance, the low end output, and bass detail. All really good for this price. Really good, guys. Cons were a little bit hard to come up with, so I tried to step out of myself and think like, what are some things like average consumer that's not me might take issue to. So what I wrote is the over-branding may not be for everyone. We've got a REL logo here on the cone and across all the feet. Someone might not like that. They might think it's too loud. Personally, I think it's beautiful. There's no finish options. It just comes in the line grain black. If you want a white subwoofer, too bad. You can't have one. Not in this model, at least. There's no high-level inputs, and it might not pair well with sloppy or lazy-sounding speakers. But let's be honest, if you've got sloppy or lazy-sounding speakers, it's time to upgrade, guys. Guys, like, sloppy speakers sound like crap. So, all right. Let's tell you about its sound. I've got this broken down into output, distinction, speed extension, and authority. Output, well, it's got lots of it, just as much as any other subwoofer with 500 watts RMS with a 12-inch driver and a sealed cabinet. That's a lot of power, that's a lot of driver. Like, it's gonna have a lot of output. Now, quantity of bass and how much you want is kind of a personal thing. Some people like a crazy, crazy amount of bass. Some people like just a little bit. So, you know, will this be enough for your room? Kind of depends. But at this price, a pair at, what would that be, 1,700 bucks? I'm sorry, 1,400 bucks for the pair. You can always get a pair if your room is on the larger side. Anyways, yeah, tons of output. Distinction, articulation, or we could just call it bass detail, honestly. Pretty freaking good. Pretty freaking good. And not just in the mid-bass region either, guys. What I was especially surprised by, because look, I expected it to have good mid-bass detail. It's a REL subwoofer. What I didn't expect is the low frequency detail. I'm talking around the 25 hertz region. There's a song I like to listen to that's got this bass drop that's around 25 hertz. And when I listen to it on the REL, so that beat hit, and then it's like amplitude just increased. Its output increased, like ramped up. And I was kind of confused at first because my brain was like, oh, that's the DSP kicking in and like boosting the signal. And then I'm like, wait, this subwoofer doesn't use a DSP. What's going on here? So I listened to that same song in my car where I've got this like massive ported box in there and a 12-inch driver and a 1,500 watt amp, and it was there. I plugged in another subwoofer in here and it was there. And then I realized what had happened is I heard detail that I hadn't heard before with the REL. And now that I've heard this detail, I can look for it and hear it with other subwoofers. Kind of like when you listen to expensive speakers that are very resolving, you'll hear things you hadn't heard before. And then when you go back to cheaper speakers, you can listen to them now because your brain knows those sounds are there. The difference though is with the REL, I don't have to listen for that change in output at that low frequency in that one song. It's immediately there. It's obviously there. It is so clear, that detail and that change in volume of that low frequency. Whereas with every other subwoofer, I have to listen for that change. So hats off, that surprised me. I didn't think I was missing any low frequency detail, honestly. I didn't think low frequency bass had a lot of detail, if I'm being completely honest. Anyways, speed is excellent. This thing starts and stops on a dime, it truly does, and it's got an edge to it when it does it. It took like 20 or 30 minutes of getting used to initially. It sounded weird to me at first because I wasn't used to such a quick responding driver. There's absolutely no overhang, and if you're a fan of a subwoofer that stops and starts when it's supposed to, you will enjoy this. The extension was excellent as well. I did not expect this to have the low end frequency output that it has in that 20 to 30 hertz region. It had a lot of authority down there. And I'm fairly common with 12-inch sealed designs, and I kind of have known what to expect in their low-end output, and this gave me more than I was expecting. Last thing I'm going to touch on is authority. That's kind of a weird one for the subwoofer because it integrates so well. And like when I was doing my review, I actually had to run this thing hot because I wasn't listening to the bass. I kept just enjoying the experience as a whole because this thing integrated so well. So I had to ended up running, like I said, I ran it hot just to be able to pay attention to the bass a little bit more. But it has authority but you might not notice it because you're not focusing on the bass, you're just enjoying the whole presentation, if that makes sense. Yeah, all right. So let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, so comparisons. So far I've told you, look, it's a great subwoofer. I love it. I think it's fantastic. It really impressed the hell out of me. How does it compare to the SVS SB2000 Pro? I listed other subwoofers that are similar in terms of spec and price, but I think that's the comparison you guys want to hear about. So let's talk about the two companies first, and then I'll tell you about how the subwoofers compare. These two companies couldn't be more different, and I think it's important to remember that. What we have with SVS is a company that makes really, really good home theater subwoofers that also makes some really good music subwoofers. With REL, it's the total opposite. We have a company that makes really, really, really good music subwoofers that made a really good home theater model that is also very good for music. And that's very obvious if you look at their top models. SVS's top model is a ported design with a 16-inch driver, and REL's top model is a sealed 15-inch subwoofer. REL's top model is clearly aimed at the music category. SVS's top model is clearly aimed at the home theater category. There's no question about that. So the REL is going to have a little bit more speed to it, a little bit more bass detail to it, and its ultra low end output is actually going to be a little bit more. It's going to have a little more authority to it. That last bit really surprised me. The SVS is going to be different in terms of, like, it's going to have that more perceived authority and slam, and you're going to get a ton more features, adjustments, fine grain tuning, and that cell phone app that allows you to make those changes from your listening position. So I really believe, while they're priced similarly, have similar specs on paper, they do sound quite different, and the feature set is very different, and I think they're for different people, honestly. I think if you're going to use software to set up your music system, whether it be Roux, Dirac, or whatever, maybe you'll like the SVS option more with all of its fine-grained controls. If you're more like me and you're going to set up your music system with your ear, I think you're going to like the REL a lot more. It integrates a little bit easier. You have less stuff to adjust. And like I said, in practice, it integrated just as well in way less time. So let me see if I wrote down anything else. I don't want to leave anything off here. Oh, strangely, the SB2000 Pro did integrate into the room just a little bit better. I think the mid-bass articulation of the REL being a little bit better did also have the downside of drawing a little bit of attention to where the subwoofer was in the room. Mid-bass does kind of make localization a thing with subwoofers, for lack of a better way to say that. Yeah, that's everything I wrote on the note cards, guys. I like this subwoofer a lot. After having it for a little over 30 days, I am throwing around the idea of buying a pair. I liked their low-end authority. I liked their integration, and that low-frequency detail, like I said, that really surprised me. So if this review started with the question of, is REL's theater subwoofer good for music? Let's answer that question. Hell yeah, it's good for music. Is it as good as their music ones? Probably not. Their music ones are probably better, but they're a lot more expensive too. Again, in case you forgot, if you want this spec, 500 watts and a 12-inch driver in their music category, right? The cheapest 500 watt subwoofer they have is the S510. That's a 10-inch driver, 500 watts RMS, $2,500. The 12-inch model, the S512, is $3,000. That's 800 watts RMS. So they should be better, right? They should be better, but this thing is freaking good. I'm surprised they made it, honestly. It's so awesome to have this like a bargain entry point into the REL brand. It's almost like, because you don't see this with other companies, right? If we use a car analogy, for example, Mercedes-Benz, the S-Class is their flagship vehicle. I'm sure they got the Maybach and the AMG GT and their other AMG models, but for their normal cars, the Mercedes S-Class is their flagship model. There's cheaper cars too that are, quite good, don't get me wrong. The E-Class is a good car as well. But then if we look at their most entry-level model, the A-Class, it's not even a Mercedes really. Sure, it kind of looks like one, but it has a tiny engine. It uses fake leather interior, and it's front-wheel drive. And everyone knows a proper luxury sedan is rear-wheel drive. The Mercedes A-Class is a Mercedes-Benz in name only and nothing else. Whereas the REL, their cheap subwoofer, is not a REL just in name. It is a REL in name and in performance, and you just get it for a killer price. It's essentially like if we give you one more car analogy, right? Let's look at the new Lamborghini SUV, the Urus. Lamborghini is a sports car manufacturer. They make beautiful, very quick, and very expensive sports cars, and they decided to make an SUV. And the SUV functions as a pretty good SUV, and it's very quick. Is it as quick as their actual sports cars? No. Is it pretty damn quick for an SUV and an amazing vehicle? Yes, absolutely. So I think you guys get my point here. This is not just a cheap REL. This is a great subwoofer overall. And in this price category, I think it really, really, really delivers. If you're looking at spending around $700 to $800 for a subwoofer, you should give this thing an audition. With the 60-day in-home trial, it's pretty easy unless you're in a country that doesn't offer that. Sorry if you are. I've talked to a few of you guys in the comments who are like, I can't do that where I live. Try to join a Facebook group or a audio forum. Maybe someone in your area has it. Some people are gracious enough to let you know their homes to audition things in some areas. I know I've invited a lot of people over. By the way, if anyone's watching, if you're local to Southern California, hit me up, come through, we'll have a listening session. Anyways, I don't think I could talk about the subwoofer anymore. At the end of the day, it's great. It surprised me. I liked it a lot. Like I said, I might buy a pair for myself. We'll see if that actually happens. Who knows? You guys know how the obsession gets. But ask your questions in the comments below. You guys know I love engaging with you. And until next time, later.